Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, Ancient Dragons, Synchro Summons, and card games on motorcycles. 5D is a favorite among fans, as it and Duel Monsters are often contested as the best iterations of the series at large. But that's the anime. What about the manga? Let's see. Also going light on the spoilers so you can watch even if you're planning on reading it and haven't yet. And no, I read on Viz. Not a sponsor, but hey, hit me up. Enough of the manga. Intro chapters. We're kicking off in the opening chapters to give a little taste of the manga origin story. We gleam into the satellite, appearing in on a race between manga Yusei and a manga original character, Sect. It's a short and simple duel that serves as a nice introduction to the story. And then we get a less sweet and simple, more wild and whacked out intro to the greater story at large. This bony motherfucker shows up.
Woo! It is hot as hell in this funky ass, hot ass room I'm in. Is that the Grim Reaper?
So basically, there's this urban legend known as the Skeleton Knight. If you rub your trading cards together, he'll appear and give you some rares. This is a great start, that we go from turbo duels against friendly rivals to an undead warrior on a muscleless horse. Didn't even take a chapter for someone to pull up to a duel not on a motorcycle. Well, the duel is good, and it's not a bad thing for chapter 1 to jank around our expectations. Sect was attempting to summon the Skeleton Knight who appeared, only instead of handing out rares like how I'd assume a Yu-Gi-Oh! Santa would work, he summons a giant altar and holds Sect hostage, with the only way Yusei can get him back is, to the surprise of no one who has ever consumed Yu-Gi-Oh! Before, a duel. And a damn cool duel. The only thing is, it spans 3 chapters, could have been 2. Ride 3 follows the same beats as Ride 2, so it was like reading the same chapter twice. But this duel did do a lot. It introduced us to the menacing antagonist that is the Skeleton Knight, who made Yusei feel genuine fear in our protagonist's second shown duel. We of course got to see more of our protagonist and his skill, as well as his willingness to fight for his friends, something that doesn't change from anime to manga. We even got some nice interaction with Sect and Yusei. And then there's the end. The duel ends in a way that I was glad to see, but glad we didn't see it too many times. First, let me tell you about the rules of turbo duels. It's different than in the anime, so we aren't dealing with speed spells or counters. In the manga, they still use normal spells, but what's unique about turbo duels here is they utilize something called sense. This was something that kind of confused me at first, so let me explain it so hopefully it's not the same for you. The hologram technology in the manga, similar to that of Arc 5, uses virtual solid sense. In other words, the monsters projected are solid, not holograms. The speed and technique the turbo duelists utilize when inflicting damage is known as sense. The faster the runner and the better the technique, as the duelists show off many different kinds of sense, the greater the impact. It should also be known that to lose a duelist either has to lose all their life points or be brought to a halt. Sense can be used to halt your opponent via damage to their duel runner or to the track, making it so they cannot go on. Got it? Okay, so like I said, sense can be used to damage the track, and that is exactly the ploy Yusei pulls off to win, targeting the pipe the skeleton horse was atop of and damaging it so it couldn't continue the race. This would have felt cheap if we saw it too many times, but here just serves as an example of how sense can be utilized to change the way the game is played. And it all ends on a fantastic cliffhanger, with Yusei creating the body of an unconscious Sect and the cutting to New Domino City, where we see some familiar faces in the form of Mina, Rex Goodwin, and looking menacing as hell, but also admittedly pretty badass, Jack Atlas, who's also apparently Goodwin's son. Read the manga. But those are the opening 4 chapters, serving as the gateway to the greater story at large, which, me personally, did make me want to read more. And I'd say that's job well done. But now we move on to the second section of the story, the Grand Prix. In this arc, we are introduced to our titular characters and cards in the form of the band formerly known as the Signers, and the Dual Dragons, formerly known as the Signer Dragons, as well as competitors at large. Somewhat similarly to GX, we get a tournament centered around one duelist, though instead of it being Zane Truesdale, it's Jack Atlas. But I actually found a ton more similarities to Duel Monsters in the next section of the story, which I'll get into in a bit. But here, said tournament goes from stadium to citywide to an island. a tournament hosted by Rex Goodwin, who again is Jack's daddy in the manga. Read the manga. But the tournament entries consist wholly of duelists who have lost to Jack, which is why he dubs the tournament as nothing more than a comeback match for losers. And folks, is he arrogant? Yes. Is it justified? Completely. He already beat all of them and is what is standing in the way of them becoming champion. Something he's been for a very long time, having won 10 consecutive City Turbo Duel tournaments. But I'll talk about Manga Jack more in depth when we get to the character section. Now, this section of the tournament shows off many new duelists and varying sense techniques. Also new is in air quotes because most of the duelists we see here are retrains of one we've already seen at some point in the anime. And there's some similarities, but also a lot of distinct differences, especially for the band formerly known as the Signers. Or I could just say Team 5Ds. I like mine better, but it's simpler to say Team 5Ds. The manga versions of Team 5Ds all appear at varying times throughout the story, and are very distinct from their anime variants, and I very much enjoyed the fresh takes on the characters. On another note, we get some lore sprinkled in this section, more in the next, but I wish we got some more regarding the satellite. In Chapter 4, Jack dropped the information that the satellite had been the birthplace of the Duel Runner, which makes you think that fact would lead to something relevant in the story, but not really. Not to say the satellite isn't relevant, but I'd love some more information about the current world, especially coming from the anime. The satellite is brought up, it's a prominent setting, but the place itself isn't delved into like what we've seen in the anime events of 5Ds, or even Arc 5. Though that's likely because geopolitical issues aren't a focus of the manga continuity. But something confusing about that is the face markings. In the anime, face markings on someone from the satellite meant they'd been arrested, and they received new markings each time they'd been caught and processed. Though nothing like that is brought up in the manga. For example of how this is confusing, Crow is still a part of the story, but he isn't a resident of the satellite. And yet, he has these markings similar to Yusei. Now you can just assume the designs were just recycled despite the in-world implications, but it stood out to me. Anyway, there's much more to say about the next section. This section purposely builds question, suspense, and intrigue toward the next part of the tournament, for both readers and the characters. So, now it's the next section of the story. The battle at the satellite. The satellite serves as the location for both the finale of the Grand Prix, as well as the place for many of the questions raised in the earlier part of the tournament to be answered. In fact, in-universe, characters say that to other characters, that's the place to find out the stuff. The last section was focused on duels and build, and did what it set out to well, and this section serves as a good payoff. There's some fantastic duels that were set up in the prior arc, and some great character moments here. Oh, and in terms of those similarities that I spoke of earlier, allow me to rattle off a list of similarities I found to Duelist Kingdom. I won't get into specifics for the 5Ds manga, because, light spoilers only, blah blah blah. The protagonist is participating to save a loved one from an evil magic. It's a tournament, though that's pretty par for the course in Yugioh, but it's one where the participants all get shipped out on a cruise to an island, those being the satellite and Duelist Kingdom itself. They have to accrue a certain amount of points via scattered items around the island to qualify for the finals. They're both hosted by a mysterious millionaire with ties to ancient magics and arts. The rivals on the island, but not actively participating at first, hiding away until later in the plot, as we know Jack is supposed to be the winner, and Seto Kaiba is looking for Mokuba. The protagonist has to struggle with another being's influence over them. A pair of twins who duel together are hired to take out the competition. A female duelist that predicts the card they'll draw right before they draw it. And then there's a friend of the protagonist with a little sibling needing a surgery. I've avoided the specifics, but that is a list of a bunch of similarities to look out for when reading the manga, or to think back to if you already have. And if you find any more, leave them down below. Now, in terms of this arc and its end, I think it does well having a fantastic ending and not betraying its characters. Though there's a character who I wish got a little more pages. It's Crow. I wish he got more. And also, you should know that on Viz, the very true ending, very ending, of the manga, it's not there. The chapter featuring the resuming of the Grand Prix and its finale, that's the very end. Said ending is not there, but also said ending is everything I could have wanted it to be, besides it being a little longer. Sticks the landing, baby! Cards. The Signer Dragons are still the titular cards, but with a different name being the Dual Dragons, and they receive even more focus throughout the entirety of the story, as well as their legend and lore getting a slight spin, which I very much enjoy. The dragons themselves are much more intimidating and legendary, and I love it. Besides from the dragons though, there was some weird stuff. Card names. Some logins. King of Ashes, Ashgash. Celestial Conquering Dragon, Dragon Ascension. Hellfire Boat Guard, Ghost Sharon. Just kinda awkwardly long names that I'm imagining having to say each time you play them. Like, these are listed on the cards. They're not just titles the characters are giving them. But yeah. Lastly, there's some bullshit cards. You say at multiple points gains cards he should by no means have out of nowhere. Like, I remember when I first watched the anime, I thought when the card polymerization was played, they created a completely new card instead of there already having to be a card. Actually, I'm not completely convinced that that's not how it works, in the anime at least, but I digress. Point is, Yusei started pulling out really specific cards to have no reason to have in his deck or have the means to get them. I'm not saying this is the only time this type of thing has happened. I mean, Yugioh literally created a new summoning method, and I'm completely sure this happened many other times throughout the greater series Dragon Master General, but I gotta at least point it out. Alright, characters. Gonna be a little more in depth, and we're gonna be a slight bit more spoilery, so yeah, just so you know. But I want to talk about them, so be warned. Now, Yusei is a similarly tough as nails, but very friendship-oriented character. He's awesome, and he's a ride or die for the homies, which is respectable as hell. We also do see his time in the satellite before he becomes the type of man he is in the present of the story, as the lone strongest of satellite. Jack. Oh, Jack Atlas. Love Manga Jack. His introduction is menacing and badass, as is his character in general. Of the entirety of the story, he's relevant and a titan in his own right, never falling to a point where his massive confidence is unearned. His monologues are fire in Silver's Duels, and the character arc he goes through is evident while still staying core to the character he was at the beginning. It's wonderful, and Manga Jack is him. Crow. Gotta love the guy. Even in the manga, he's an absolutely lovable character and a great guy. He's also an awesome duelist. His introduction duel being one of the most striking and memorable of the whole manga, as well as him having one of my favorite duels in the form of his bout with Yusei. Though his new backstory I felt to be meh. I'll be straight, he's got a sick little brother, and while it is terrible, I feel like they leveraged that emotional weight much better with Joey. Here it felt more like a quick add-on to add emotional weight to his backstory. We barely even see or hear about his brother. Would have been better if he was just straight up a guy who really liked duels. Also wish he got longer duels. His lessons were cut kind of short and could have been more. Honestly, could have just been more to Crow here in general. Also, here's Crow with his hair down. Akiza was really cool in the manga. One thing about her here is that instead of wigging out with her psychic powers and leaving her school for the Arcadia movement, she's still a psychic and is known as the Queen of Duel Academy. Alexis wishes. And spoilers, something I'm not a fan of is the form her psychic ability takes. She possesses the ability to correctly predict the card she's going to draw. Man, it's like, whatever. It feels like they really wanted to make it cool because it's always hyped up by our classmates, but it's like, okay, I guess. It's like with I don't care if you know the next card you're gonna pull. Whoa, you can name the card 3 seconds before you pull it out and look at it. Jinkies! Fucking, if you're gonna predict cards and expect me to be intimidated by that, pull a Maximilian Pegasus and predict my cards, not your own. Also, said power isn't even clearly defined. It seems like it's some sort of weird third eye based on other tricks she pulls off with it, but it's not so clear. Either way, if she's got greater vision or can see the future, she's really underutilizing her power. Also, there was apparently a school full of psychics that's main purpose was to refine the abilities of psychic duelists so they can assume the most important roles in the dueling world, which want to make fun of until you remember the fate of the world being decided upon via the results of a children's card game is a norm in the series, so maybe they were onto something. This school could have been something really cool to dive into. Maybe if this was an anime, they might have gotten their own arc. But we only got 6 chapters to work with, so them's the breaks, I guess. Leo and Luna. Very formidable from the jump in this continuity, if not also a bit more crazy. Their story as siblings was sad, but also very touching and heartwarming. A very interesting duo in the manga. Cal and Kessler. I already went over the core group, but I love Callan, especially in part due to Mark Derison's performance in the dub, as he was incredible at pulling off Callan's insanity. Fantastic performance. But Callan is in fact a key player in the manga, and his addition was welcome. In the manga, our boy's rocking that long hair Crash Town look, and like in the anime, you get some glimpses at multiple sides of the duelist. That's all I'll say though. Just wanted to make it known that I really like Callan. Sect. Gotta talk about our manga original main character. I love Sect and his growth and characterization throughout the manga, as well as his dynamic with Yusei. He was a great asset to the story, playing multiple roles and helping move along the plot. It's great. And now, the duels. I like Sense, that being the part of the main intrigue of the duels in the manga, though it was kinda weird at first, but it led to many different strategies to play with for the different characters. But I gotta say, crazy thing to put in the hands of the masses. One of the duelists straight up has a terrorist deck. This is dangerous technology that is clearly not that hard to get your hands on. The satellite is basically the Yu-Gi-Oh slums, yet everyone has a duel disc and they host duels on the regular. Also, for the final duels, they're all pretty great. Having some of my standout favorites with Crow vs Yusei, the very final duel at the end, and honestly pretty much any Jack duel. I'm telling you, man, this dude's monologues were fire. I went over them in the original draft of this video, which was a full chapter by chapter manga review that I scrapped, though let me know if you guys might want that in the future. As well as possibly a more spoiler heavy review in the near future, though I do already have some other plans for Yugioh videos, having also read the Doji manga. But to end out this 5Ds review, it's good. Go read it. And remember, Final Duel isn't on Viz, so go find it if you read it on there. It's also really, really good. Alright, peace. Have a good day.